Hello, I'm Amanda Barton. I'm the Wellbeing Coordinator at KG5, and I'm going to talk you through some of these slides. The slides are available for you to look through at your own pace, but I'm going to add a little bit more detail than what's found on here for the OR data. So AWE is Assessing Wellbeing in Education. It's a data program that has been used at ESF, all schools, for the last 3 years, and this is the fourth set of data that students and staff at KG5 have collected. So we're just going to look a little bit at the comparisons and what we're learning and the reasons why we're doing these surveys. This year's obviously been quite an unusual year in terms of the context of the pandemic and being in and out of school an awful lot. Even so, really looking at this data, we don't see any massive changes compared to previous years for both staff or students. We're about average. The completion rates at KG5, we can see here, have gone down this year, however, and mainly that is due to just not being in school, not having kind of tutors driving this during tutor time. So you can see our previous data collection we've done in, we started in September 2018, and we did 2 collections in 2019, and then this one slightly later than usual. We're trying to do at least September every year, but that wasn't possible this year. So we had just under half of all students who replied to this survey and more like 2/5 of staff. And the reason we collect this data is, or the reason we do this process, is threefold. Firstly, it's the process itself of reflection on your own well-being. It enables both students and staff to ask themselves these questions and think about what elements contribute to their well-being. Secondly, it's useful for us to see an overview of how the school is doing. And thirdly, which is probably one of the most useful ones from pastoral perspective, is to pick up on individual students. So here are the headlines really, that KG5 is about average. You can see the graph in the top right corner there. This is literally just breaking down previous data into fifths, into the top 20%, bottom 20%, all the 20%. And this data is in comparison to mainly Australian private schools. There are also some New Zealand schools in there and some Asian schools. The company that run this are now saying they probably have enough data to just do an Asian comparison, but that won't be for this year. And ESF is also looking at comparing within its own foundation to look at how different schools are doing. So we can see here the first bar, it says seniors, but that just means all of the students at KG5, seniors as secondary school students. Very similar for both staff and seniors. Students are remaining about average, staff are kind of just slightly below average. And this, importantly, is not a measure of well-being at school. This is a whole life well-being. So there's a variety of different questions that contribute to this awesome score. So looking over the last 4 collections, here's just a graph showing that data. Maybe some evidence to suggest that there's a little bit of a bump in September 2019, but looking at the scale as well, we're only looking between 6 and 7.5 there, so I would say nothing hugely significant. Now we're just going to look at these other 3 areas, which are health, which is based on 1 question, wellbeing enablement, and bullying. Pleased to say bullying is always quite low at KG5. So health, again, no major changes. The only result there that looks slightly out of place was looking at September 2019 for staff. Health seemed to take a big dip. That was around kind of protest time in Hong Kong, so that could have been a contributing factor to that. Wellbeing enablement is asking, in general, how satisfied are you that your school supports and enables student wellbeing? So the students seem to be more satisfied with this in general than the staff. So again, students about average, staff slightly below average. Not many huge changes over the years. In actual fact, the highest score for seniors was this year, November 2020. Bullying, we've seen a small decrease for this latest collection. It's always quite low. To be honest, we haven't really been at school, so the opportunities for face-to-face bullying have not been there, although there's obviously been a lot more online interaction, and this is included in this. It doesn't seem to be reported as much as it was in the past, which is a good sign. So just a small decrease there. Here we've got resilience, reported levels of resilience. So all of these results are self-reported. And again, we seem to be seeing a little bit of a dip for students here. Staff mainly quite flat, but generally staff reporting slightly higher resilience than students. But we're always coming in around this somewhere between 6 and 7 range. This is just a summary of the results we've just looked at. So we've got the awesome score, the happiness, resilience, and health and lifestyle. No, sorry, this is not a summary. This is the next bit. So again, we've got about average well-being for awesome score for students. This is just students. Most students are saying that they are mildly happy, which is average again. Resilience, about average, and health and lifestyle, about average. Again, when we're saying about average, it means we're going into that middle 20% compared to the schools that I mentioned earlier. Okay, so we've got health and lifestyle. We did have a little bit of a dip in March. If you look at the results that were in September, and then November again, they're quite stable. This bit of dip in March could have been that we were in the middle of the academic year. So most schools just do 1 survey per year. They would have done 3. We did this extra one just to see if the time of year made a difference. It looks like it does a little bit here. Okay, this year for the first time, we actually included some data on gender and on ethnicity. There's always year group data that's included and that's automatically collected here. So just we wanted to take a look and see if there are any differences in these 4 areas when we looked at year groups, gender or ethnicity. So we can see the response rates here, a pretty good sample size from all year groups, and a general trend which we've seen in all previous years as well. This is just showing November 2020 here, that we tend to see a bit of a gradual decrease. In year 12, it goes up a little bit and then back down. So kind of gradual decrease until first exams in year 11, and then a little bit up and then down again for year 13. Tends to be what we see in general. So this is our awesome score, then self-reported happiness, self-reported resilience. Interestingly here, there does seem to be a little bit of a dip in year 9, and then self-reported health again tends to be highest in year 7 and gradually decrease. And here we have a little bit of a blip in year 9 as well. Again, I'm saying a gradual decrease. We're talking from always within the range from about 6 to 8. Looking at difference between males and females, we did ask students to put male, female or other. There is usually a slight decrease for females, although that's not as evident this year. So we can see that mostly females and males are fairly equal here. It is our students who are reporting as other who have got a fairly significant dip in all 4 of these areas. Again, our sample size here is only 11, but it is definitely a noteworthy result there, and probably no surprise given other data. And finally, we've got ethnicities. These ethnicities are taken from the data that ESF holds. So we weren't asking students to fill this in, we've just cross-referenced. And the most significant result here is this grey bar that seems to be lower in all 4 areas, and that is our Eurasian students. A big enough sample size there for that to be significant. So this was probably the most surprising result from this data. Ones that were just left blank seem to be pretty high. There's generally even across the others. Maybe the other East Asian in certain areas was quite low as well, for example, happiness. But really we can see this consistently low score for Eurasian students. So that was our overview. Individual alerts are when students generate a very low well-being score or who say they're being bullied. And this is actually something that we deal with immediately. As soon as these alerts come through, we will contact these students. So this year, we had a total of 30 alerts. 20 of those were due to low well-being scores. And the first port of call, there will always be the tutor talking to the individual student about that. It might be a student that we already know about. It might not be. In here, out of the students this year, 10 out of the 30 alerts were new cases, and the other 20 across the two areas were students that were already being offered support or we already knew about. Some people, there's always some false bullying alerts because the scale is flipped. So someone who's been going through saying they're 10 out of 10 for everything and answering the questions without really reading them properly, quite often will say, yeah, 10 out of 10 for bullying, thinking that means they're fine, but that's actually them saying that they're being bullied. We always get a few false ones in there. All of the students who create alerts will be dealt with on an individual basis with by the tutor or head of year or a member of our counselling team. So in terms of this year compared to previous years, 2020 has not seen a massive increase for us in terms of individual alerts. Accounting for sample size, I've just looked at percentage of the students, and we can see that for wellbeing, it's not really significantly different. We're pretty much usually around 2% of our students have a wellbeing alert created. That was slightly higher for March 2019. And for bullying, again, these numbers are so low that even a few individual differences can make a difference here. So it is still pleasing to see, though, that that's just at 0.8. Okay, so the question really is, what next now we've had this data? Well, already quite a lot of action's been put into place in terms of individuals, and already we've had the process itself of students completing this. So that's an action in itself, but coming up, we will look into comparing against other ESF secondary schools to see where we fit there, because that will be a more meaningful comparison for KG5. There has already been some staff consultation about how wellbeing can be improved amongst staff, particularly in the current context. And it's difficult at the moment given the circumstances, but student consultation with student bodies that are already elected, such as prefects and our wellbeing ambassadors, will be the next port of call coming up in the next few weeks. That's that. Any questions, please do email me, and thanks for your attention.